Delhi land pooling policy, what is it? What promise did it hold for the citizens living in the capital of the world's largest democracy? And why should we be hopeful that Delhi's land pooling policy, which was announced in 2013, will finally take off? Welcome everyone to the Property Show. Let's set the context to today's discussion with a basic explainer of Delhi's land pooling policy. Now, Delhi has seen a substantial rise in population, both organic and through migration. And in the last few decades, Delhi's population has gone up from 60 lakh people to almost 2 crore people. The current infrastructure and housing available in Delhi are simply not enough to accommodate all the 2 crore Delhiites. Now, over the years, that's why we've seen mushrooming of slums and unauthorized colonies in the city. Some estimates put that count to 10,000 unauthorized colonies. Now, looking at these challenges and with the vision of making Delhi a world-class capital, the Delhi Development Authority, under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, notified the Delhi land pooling policy as far back as in September 2013. Now, what is LPP all about? So, it's important to know that land pooling is a globally acceptable model for a city development. Delhi LPP was aimed at getting individuals or a group of landowners living in urban villages on Delhi's peripheries to pool their land, hand it over to DDA, which in turn was to develop public infrastructure like roads. Now, DDA representing the government was to keep 40% of the land for public infrastructure and return 60% of the land back to the original landowners. After the pooling exercise, the landowners were free to rope in real estate developers to build residential and commercial real estate or projects. The zoning for Delhi land pooling was done in accordance with Master Plan of Delhi 2021, which had aimed at bringing in 192 urban villages of Delhi into the fold of planned development. Now, 104 of these villages were part of land pooling and 88 were to form a green belt around Delhi. Ideally, Delhi Master Plan should have been implemented right after regulations were notified, and of course, the Delhi land pooling should have been notified as far back as in 2015. Since then, though, policy itself has seen revisions and the last one was released in 2018, which again failed to take off. Now, though, there is a buzz, or let's say some excitement in the air. Vinay Kumar Saxena has been appointed as Delhi's new Lieutenant Governor and Manoj Joshi has taken charge as Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Now, both these administrators we hear are extremely keen to get LPP or Delhi land pooling policy off the ground. Now, what are the thorny issues which need a resolution to make the policy viable? Joining me are Gaurav Jain, Vice President North NAREDCO and MD Samyak Properties. Also with us is Bhupender Bazad, President at Delhi Master Plan Committee, and Ramesh Menon, Director, Certes Realty. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. And Ramesh, I am not going to go back to why the policy did not take off because, there's no point in delving in the past. My question to you now is that I believe deliberations have happened, meetings have happened, suggestions have been given. How confident are you that it will take off this time? And if it does, what are the changes which are critical to make it work?
Taking forward the positivity cue, the Delhi Development Authority or the authorities have to do two things. One, make the policy more predictable. And second is the multiplicity of authorities. So they have to do a single window among themselves also to facilitate these landowners to pool their land, submit to the government, and also in return get all kinds of approvals in a timeline-bound manner. Having said that, what is most important is the operational mechanism that the DDA would now announce on how these policies would go forward. I'm not dissecting the policy anymore. Let us take it, accept it in the way or form it has been decided. But what is more critical is how would it be operationalized. For example, if a sector is 500 acres, there could be 50 or there could be 500 owners. How do we plan to bring them all together? Does DDA plan to have a role for itself directly? Would they appoint a clutch of consultants who would clarify these things to the landowners. What is the mechanism of return of land back? For example, even in your introduction, you said DDA will keep 40% of the land. Actually, it will not keep. That land will be reinvested in the form of city-level services, be it roads, large parks, green areas, etc., etc. So these things have to be communicated extremely simplistically to the farmers or landowners. Only then can the planning process take forward. So DDA has to do a formal private partnership or engaging the private sector in a manner that they take the lead in this.
Okay. Ramesh, what I'm hearing from you is that the operational issues are probably much larger than any issues with the policy itself in its current form. Bhupender, aap isse sehmat hai that what you need is just operational efficiency from DDA and maybe, private capable agencies to be appointed to take this land pooling policy forward? Or do you believe that there are changes itself which are needed in the policy to make it work? Because if I'm looking at the fact that, very few farmers, only 1/3 farmers have even tendered their land any time that it's been kept open, that's not very encouraging. It doesn't seem like farmers are dying to come forward and give up their land.
पार्टली मैं रमेश भाई की बात से काफ़ी सहमत हूँ, लेकिन उन्होंने जैसे बताया कि ऑपरेशनलाइजेशन होना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है इसके अंदर, जो कि नीट एंड क्लीन पॉलिसी हो और ऑपरेशनलाइजेशन में कहीं पर कंट्राडिक्टरी ना हो. एक्चुअली में पॉलिसी जो बनी हुई है इसमें कहीं ना कहीं कंट्राडिक्शंस हैं पॉलिसी के अंदर ही. तो अभी 6 पॉइंट एजेंडा हमने दिया है कि ये तुरंत में किए जाने वाले, और 3 से 4 पॉइंट्स हैं जो हम बाद में ये करने के तुरंत बाद उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करना शुरू करते हैं. तो उसमें जो टेक्निकल ग्लिचेस हैं, लाइक कनेक्टिविटी के लिए UER2 को उसके अंदर से NHI को नहीं दिया गया, जो कि सिर्फ P1 जोन और N जोन के अंदर ही है. अनदर पॉइंट्स हैं जैसे कि DD एक्ट के अंदर चेंज, अमेंडमेंट इन DD एक्ट, जो कि टेक्निकली शेयर होल्डिंग, जो ज्वाइंट शेयर होल्डिंग है या कंसोर्शियम के कंसोलिडेशन नहीं हुई हुई है, स्टैंप ड्यूटी अट्रैक्ट कर रही थी हमारे को ऊपर, जो लैंड ओनर लैंड देते थे उसके बाद वापस देते उसके ऊपर स्टैंप ड्यूटी अट्रैक्ट कर रही थी. जो पूल्ड शेयरिंग लैंड है वो अभी कंटिग्यूटी में नहीं आ रही थी, और फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी EDC के अंदर भी फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी हो. तो इसी तरह के कुछ और पॉइंट्स हैं, अगर आप आगे डिस्कशन करेंगे तो उसमें हाईलाइट करूंगा.
तो आप कह रहे हैं कि दीज आर सम ऑफ द इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट्स व्हिच यू हैव ऑलरेडी कम्युनिकेटेड टू द मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ Urban Affairs. Gaurav, you're also an important stakeholder in Delhi's development as a developer entity. Tell me, are you hopeful this time that it will take off? Are we, getting excited for no reason, or do we really believe that the new administrators have that capacity, capability and attention to make Delhi land pooling policy happen? And if yes, what are the changes you're looking forward to?
I think the theme of the entire program today is to be positive, so let's be positive around it. We had met the new Secretary of Urban Development and he is very forthcoming, very positive. I think the challenge here is it's a chicken and egg story, and I think you will appreciate that this is the only area in the entire country where not even a single developer has ever shown interest to even talk about it, or at least say that I want to be part of it. So what is the reason? The reason is very simple. There is not a single person who would like to take ownership of so many other farmers on their head. Earlier policy, the first one which came out or came out in 2006 onwards, gave you an option of 5 acres and 50 acres, and that was something which any developer can easily do. We had met Honorable Secretary as well as Mr. Manish Gupta, who is the Vice Chairman DDA, and various other officials of DDA. And we had mooted a simple proposal: why don't you let a developer collect 100 acres like it used to be done in Haryana once upon a time, and then he can tie with all the farmers, buy the land, do a collaboration, then come to you to take a license. Now, the moment it becomes 200 sectors, multiply with 300 acres each, you're looking at 60,000 acres of land coming into a single bullet for development in Delhi. I think it's a stupendous task. So we have given them a couple of options. A, reduce the land for which I can get the license to 100 acres. 50 acres would be the right size, but let's say 100 acres. The good thing which is happening in the current policy, they are now letting us do the plotted development. So that's a very positive point. Now look at in last 1 year in the entire NCR region, plot sales have exploded like there's no tomorrow. Rates have gone literally double. So, Delhi has become like the only place in the entire country where we are still growing wheat, sarso and, various vegetables. Whereas places like Gurgaon and Ghaziabad, they have become the cosmopolitan in the urban center, which we are saying they are rivaling with New York and the London, of this world. I assure you, there will be 50 developers outside DDA office tomorrow to take licenses. And that is not, I'm saying it myself. We've had enough discussion among the NAREDCO members, and they keep pushing it back to me that, Gaurav, you're pushing for this thing, but how can I work here? What is the policy? And when we are at fault to explain to them, see, developers are smart entities. They can smell things when, it is not even in the infancy stage. It is still being thought about. So the moment this policy has been on the drawing board, has been in the planning stage, has been executed so far, and not a single person is coming to put a single rupee over here, I think this shows the flaw that is the so-called 70%. Imagine 70% contiguous land, 350 acres or 300 acres as Ramesh says, the 500 acres if you look at it. There is no mechanism. And then so many people are coming to you and what they're asking you to do is, who will develop my land first? I'll develop my 50 acres or your 350 acres also becomes the challenging question thereafter. There is absolutely, whether I'm buying it through the farmer or I'm doing collaboration with him, the challenge is size cannot be more than 100 odd acres. That's a very huge size of the project. That will itself be a 5,000 crore project if you look at it in a very objective sense of it.
Understood. Ramesh, take on from where Gaurav has left and tell me, he's actually pointed to a very stark reality that look at how Gurgaon has developed or Noida has developed and look where we are in terms of housing stock and just the entire infrastructure. We could have done so much better as a capital. Would you agree that we've got left behind in the race and some of the points that Gaurav has raised, are they valid?
Oh yes, absolutely. Delhi is mistaking it for housing. Actually, it's the process of urbanization. We are not just talking about physical infrastructure, we are talking about housing infrastructure, commercial infrastructure, recreational infrastructure and social infrastructure. For every 10,000 people, you need a certain number of schools, certain hospital beds. Where do those come from? So, if DDA is trying to shirk away its responsibility or other departments are hiding behind the various laws. For example, the Revenue Department practices Delhi Land Reform Act 1954. MCD is covered under the MCD Act. DDA is covered under DDA Act. A lot of the tenets of these acts in the context of Delhi Master Plan 2041 are redundant, are useless. For example, if there are 500 owners owning 50 acres, so are they owning 1/10 of their own land? How do they participate in the development process with different developers, etc., etc., etc.? There are multiple legal issues. So DDA should take ownership and say, hey, if developers are willing to invest, if institutional capital is willing to come in, we will facilitate, but we will not be adjudicating you because they have to let go the control. You cannot scare the investor and expect them to come in and invest capital with an exposure of at least 10 to 20 years.
Point taken. Gentlemen, hold your thought. We're going to come back. So what I'm hearing is that the role of DDA has been to act as a facilitator for all stakeholders, but there are multiple stakeholders to begin with when it comes to Delhi's development, and DDA itself has probably not been able to keep up its promise of even a single window clearance or the facilitator role. We'll come back to get the solutions to what will it take to get the Delhi land pooling policy off the ground. Stay with us. land pooling policy has been stuck for almost a decade, but now there is some expectation because stakeholders have been meeting. Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, we also have DDA in the picture. All of them seem to be far more committed to get the policy off ground. And we have with us three experts who've been very closely associated with Delhi's development to tell us what's going on and why should we be more hopeful this time around. भूपेंद्र जी, आप बताइए, 3-4 मुद्दे तो आपने हमें बता दिए क्या इश्यूज हैं जो आपने लेटर में भेज दिए हैं. अगर आप मुझे 3 और बड़े मुद्दे बताइए जिसकी वजह से ये पॉलिसी फाइनली सक्सेसफुल हो जाएगी या हो सकती है.
थैंक यू मनीषा जी, आपने बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन को एड्रेस किया है. जो ये आपको 3-4 मुद्दे बताए थे, इसके अलावा एक मॉनिटरिंग कमेटी जो गौरव भाई ने भी जिक्र किया और रमेश जी ने भी, कि जो मॉनिटरिंग कमेटी एक इस तरह से बने जो टाइम बाउंड मैनर के अंदर इसको सारी चीजों को गो थ्रू कर पाए और उनकी अकाउंटेबिलिटी, ऑफिसर्स की अकाउंटेबिलिटी और स्टेक होल्डर्स का उसमें इंटरफेयर हो, मतलब उसमें पार्ट हो उसका.
And this clause, Bhupender, the clause for, removing the clause for mandatory contiguous land pool, which also Gaurav said is a very big issue. Will that get accepted? Do you think that will actually go through this time?
जी ऑलरेडी प्रोसेस में है. डीडीए ने अपना सारा ड्राफ्ट बनाकर कैबिनेट नोट के लिए भेज दिया है. इसके अलावा जो मेजर 2 इशू है कंसोर्शियम फॉर्मेशन का, जैसे सभी कहा था कि इतनी बड़ी लैंड है, कैसे इसको कंसोर्शियम को फॉर्मेशन करेंगे. तो कंसोर्शियम को बदलना आज के टाइम पे पॉलिसी के साथ में थोड़ा मुश्किल है. ईडीसी के अंदर फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी जो पहले ही बताया था कि ईडीसी हमारे को 60% पे चार्ज करे, दे ऑलरेडी एक्सेप्टेड. और जितने सेक्टर्स हैं इनके अंदर अभी 3 सेक्टर, 2.5 सेक्टर का इन्होंने नोटिस दिया है, मगर 17 से 18 सेक्टर जो 70% थ्रेशोल्ड क्रॉस कर चुके हैं.
चलिए, तो आपको लग रहा है कि सम ऑफ द डिमांड्स दैट यू आस्क्ड फॉर आर ऑलरेडी अंडर कंसिडरेशन. गौरव, you want to come in here. You've heard what Bhupender said. He's very hopeful. Where are your, let's say, doubts that this may not happen?
The best thing is there are no doubts. I think.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
All 4 of us on the same frequency. The point is here there is absolutely no reason why the land pooling policy will not be a success, except the fact that the stakeholder have to give one answer. Who is the developer who's coming to be a consortium member, who's coming to say that I want to be the developer here? But that is one question I've asked both my August friends here. I've asked in various discussions. Now, if that is not happening, how can anybody say that it is getting developed? It is not developing. Now, second question. L zone, Chawla, UER is being seen there. Gurgaon, next door, you can see the plots and the flats coming up at a rate which is not even funny. Now, the only point is, my request to everybody is, don't get into the complications. Just get the work started by telling the people who matter, give one person a permission to start the work and it will automatically become good. There is nothing here. EDC, IDC, we all have been paying for. ADC, IDC, government will charge. I cannot stop them. You cannot stop them. The point here also is, Gurgaon now has an FSI on an average on the TOD part of it, nearly 300. I can even do the TDRs. I can buy open space land and transfer it. So people are doing FSI to the extent of even 350 on most of the projects. Noida already had a FSI of 300 on the plan. Here the net land, and I think both my friends can give you an answer, is not even getting a FSI 150. Are we in a retrograde policy or we are getting a progressive policy? FSI is the only thing which can make the whole thing become less expensive and
viable. Unfortunately, Gaurav, we have run out of time completely. I don't think I can toss that question to the other panelists on what they want from the how much FSI do they want? But points taken that you may have a consortium structure, but who in the consortium will actually negotiate with the developer? That's an important one. The Delhi Land Act also is redundant, isn't that, Ramesh? Was that your point?
Legal is one point. All I say is make the land investment worthy. If only 30% of any land assumption, any sector has come into or been pooled in for development, what happens to the 70? So to draw investment, make Delhi investment worthy. Rest of the things are fine. I agree with everybody else that it has to be pragmatic and it has to be very predictable. Notifications can come in, changes can be brought in, but at least make Delhi investment worthy.
And
Make
let's
it
get
attractive.
started. Let's get started. I think that's the big important message. Let's hope we hear something from the cabinet and, have some shape and form to Delhi land pooling policy. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. We've completely run out of time, but goodbye. It's a long conversation, a little complicated, but we just need to end by saying that it's a fantastic policy if it takes off for Delhi's development and growth.